slide since it's
1 minute out.
takes me a while.
You want to completely
I won't
lock?
wear my sunglasses tonight, but that
Oh.
helped a lot.
Okay.
Thank you, Flora, I appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Just the files. It's 7 o'clock, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good evening. A meeting of the Human Affairs Committee is called to order for Monday, April 18th at 7 p.m. at the Aldermanic Chamber via Zoom teleconference. The meeting link can be found in the agenda and on the city's website. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. If you're participating by Zoom, please state whether or not there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting and your reason for not participating in person, which is required under the right to know law. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
I'm here.
Alderman at Large Melbourne Moran Jr.
Present.
Alderman at Large Gloria Timmons.
Here.
The clerk, Alderman Tricia Clee, is here, and Chairman Alderman Thomas Lopez.
I'm here.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 members present, right?
And also joining us is President Wilshire. I see Alderman Derek Tebow, who's on Zoom. And then numerous city department heads. I think Director Sullivan is in the audience as well. Okay. Oh, I see I have a list of also in attendances that includes Heidi Peak, which may or may not be true, Deb Chisholm, interim urban department manager as well. And then I mentioned Matt Sullivan, community development director. To start, we will have open a public hearing for the draft action plan fiscal 2023 annual action plan for CDBG and home programs. Do we want, Ms. Chisholm, do you want to come up and make a quick summary, or Mr. Sullivan, just to introduce the second hearing?
Director Sullivan.
Director Sullivan, apologies.
Hi, good evening. Deb Chisholm, Interim Urban Programs Department Manager. This evening, we're having our second public hearing regarding community development block grant funding and home funds. I will tell you, just as a quick summary, this is a very typical program that we run through urban programs. The funds are, the Cdbg funds are primarily focused on nonprofits that apply every year. Municipal projects are also included in that. And we also get home funds during that same allotment period from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And that is for, we use the funds for owner-occupied and rental housing, rehab. Very successful program, millions of dollars spent every year, making some really great improvements. I will tell you, we do not currently have the allocations from HUD at this point, which it makes things a little bit more challenging. At the end of the day, what we need to have is an action plan submitted to HUD on how we intend to spend the money, but we can't complete the action plan until we know how much money we have to spend. So it's a little dog chasing its tail going on. But in the interim, I've created a spreadsheet which I sent to you that essentially works off of the funding amount that we had received last year, just as a starting point. And then the numbers that you see in that spreadsheet are either typical of what we've used in the past, or they are the actual application requests that we received from the nonprofits through the application process. So my assumption is that there may be some nonprofits who are both here in attendance and on Zoom as well to speak to their projects and provide answers to any questions that you folks might have.
And we would be able to include the communications that you had to the minutes of either this hearing or the meeting, I think.
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay, awesome. And just for members of the public who are keeping score or want to look up more, this is for R22025. If you go to the city's website under government, I believe you'll be able to see this under pending ordinances. Does anybody in the committee have some questions for Ms. Chisholm?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. I know you said that we don't have the funds yet, but then you said that we have to give them a report without having the funds. What is the date that we have to give them the report? And what are the dates that we hope or expect to see the actual numbers?
I cannot give you any input on when we expect to see the numbers. I can tell you soon, but that means nothing. I don't know when we're going to see the numbers. Typically, what's happened in the past is that we've been required to submit our annual action plan by May 15th. And so I've been working diligently to try to keep us on track with that. Very recently, I received word from HUD that they are allowing recipients to push their action plan submittals off and can submit the action plan within 60 days of receiving the allocation. So that is new. I can send you a revised schedule, which I had sent you in the past, but now is somewhat revised. And we can talk either here at the meeting or later about how we want the rest of this to sort of play out so that we can make the timing work at the end.
Mr. Chairman, I'll wait for the meeting. Thank you.
But just to reflect so I understand what I just heard, HUD is not giving us our final amounts. We don't want to not make a plan for what we think the amounts will be because we have the nonprofits and the organizations that are hoping to make plans around this and would need a firm answer. So we are trying to be proactive in being ready as soon as possible, knowing that HUD hasn't given us numbers yet. HUD did give us a little bit more leeway, but in terms of best practice planning, being able to complete our plan as early as possible and then address any changes that have to be made makes more sense than not making a plan until HUD gets around to doing one.
You said it perfectly. Yep.
Okay.
Great.
All right, awesome, I appreciate it. So if there are no other questions from members of the committee, then we will take testimony in favor of the draft action plan. So any nonprofits that want to come forward to speak testimony in favor, you're definitely invited to do so. When you do come up to the mic, make sure you give your name and your address. We have a transcriber who listens to these and we want to make sure they can identify you.
Got it. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to our grant application. My name is Ashley Fidella, and I'm the Senior Director of Special Projects and Community Partnerships at the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Nashua. I'm in charge of all of the facilities, projects, and maintenance of our club located at One Positive Place in Nashua, New Hampshire. If received, Cdbg funds will be used to replace a section of our club's main sewer line that is currently broken by tree roots. For those of you unfamiliar with the Boys and Girls Club, our building is a 50,000 square foot facility located near Ledge Street School. Our mission is to enable all youth, especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential as productive, caring, responsible citizens. We achieve this mission by providing hot meals, youth development programming, social emotional support and mentorship, academic support, transportation, and prevention programming to youth in Nashua. Our programs are available to youth for an annual fee of just $35, and scholarships are provided to any child who demonstrates need. Currently, 66% of the children we serve come from low to moderate income families. Our club is open for this after-school youth development programming from 2 to 8 p.m. every day during the school week. Recently, we opened our doors to youth during the day through a partnership with the Nashua School District and the Youth Council called Project Succeed, in which any middle and high school student facing out-of-school suspension or who is at risk of expulsion is sent to our club during the day instead of their homes. We provide academic support to catch students up on schoolwork, a hot breakfast and lunch, youth development programming, and social emotional counseling to find and solve for any unmet needs they may have. In addition to our own programs, the club is used by a wide variety of community groups to include 7 swim teams or swim programs, Nighthawks basketball program, Spartans Drum and Bugle Corps, and other community groups. We view our facility as a community center and actively seek out new partnerships to meet the needs of the youth in our city. We are requesting Cdbg funds to replace a portion of the facility's sewer line that's currently blocked by tree roots that have grown into the pipe. We have spent about $2,500 over the last 6 months on diagnosing and temporarily unblocking this pipe. These funds will permanently fix the problem and will prevent any further sewage backup into our building. We've had multiple situations where we've had to cancel high school swim meets and other scheduled activities due to sewer backups in our locker rooms and bathrooms. Between our own club programs, our Project Succeed partnership, and our community groups using our facility, it's imperative that we remain open at all times. We've received multiple quotes, which range from $12,000 to $14,000. City project manager Mike Junglers also came to the club to walk throughout the project with us and communicated feeling confident that we had done our due diligence as far as we can. And I just want to say thank you for your time and support of this project and our club members.
Thank you for your comments.
Any questions?
As a public hearing, this is more for testimony.
Love that.
If you want to stay for the committee meeting immediately afterwards, we may have more questions.
Oh, thank you.
Did you state your name and address for the record?
I did. Ashley Fidella from the Boys and Girls Club, and that's One Positive Place.
Okay, I didn't hear it. I just missed it. Thank you.
Additional testimony in favor?
Good evening. My name is Ruth Morissette. I'm the Director of Development at Gateways Community Services, located at 144 Canal Street here in Nashua. For over 40 years, Gateways Community Services has offered programs and services promoting growth and independence for individuals with developmental disabilities. Formerly known as Area Agency of Greater Nashua, Gateways began as a group of concerned parents looking for better life opportunities for their children with disabilities. And at that time, New Hampshire residents with disabilities were being actively enrolled and boarded at the Laconia State School, which was the state institution where people with disabilities were kept in isolation from the community. And some people spent a lifetime locked away in Laconia before the facility was permanently closed in 1991. People with developmental disabilities live at varying levels of independence in our community, including supported residential group homes. So Gateways oversees residential care for vulnerable individuals with developmental disabilities that require 24/7 support and affordable housing. And we coordinate our service delivery with a number of vendors who provide the supports and services to the residents. Every year, we'll evaluate the needs of our properties and prioritize updates and repairs that are needed to keep our properties as safe and hospitable as possible. The individuals that live in these properties are all low income, they're all on Medicaid, they have a developmental disability and need supportive housing and services. So our request is funding to replace wooden fencing that's rotting at our 4 Beard Street residence here in Nashua. The fencing has an estimated cost of $8,985. So we just look forward to being able to enhance the property for our clients' well-being, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any additional testimony, public testimony in favor of our draft action plan as proposed?
Sure. So my name is, my name is Michael Reinke. I'm a resident of 35 Locke Street. I am the executive director for the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter, and I just want to speak in favor of the motion. We have at least 250 people coming through our facility at 2 Quincy Street every day to receive food assistance and financial assistance, job employment counseling. We're looking for funding to redo our floors, and this is incredibly needed, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Further public testimony in favor?
Someone on Zoom as well.
Huh?
There's someone on Zoom as well.
Okay, so we do see you on Zoom, and then in addition, I think I should probably acknowledge Director Bagley has signed on as well. Director Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm here to speak briefly in favor of the $100,000 request contained within the committee documents and acknowledged by the funding amount defined within the legislation for the creation and construction of a crosswalk in the general location of Clock Tower Place and Pine Street. And I'm here on behalf of the city's Economic Development Office, who were not able to join the meeting this evening. The current objective is to use this crosswalk to serve a variety and multitude of low to moderate income residents of Monahan Manor, or future residents, Clock Tower Place, Cotton Mill, as well as the unhoused that regularly traverse this area of the community core. Specifically, we recognize that there's a need for not only these residential tenants, but also commercial tenants to access their residences, their businesses, and certainly the recreational assets that are located adjacent in Mines Falls Park. And this critical pedestrian connection is an opportunity to more safely and securely provide that access. This opening of a residential pathway certainly is an opportunity that was recognized in the master plan, as were all pedestrian connections, and this crosswalk is a critical amenity in favor of that objective. We'd emphasize the fact that there's a necessity for safe crossings of Pine Street, and certainly we've all witnessed, I believe, unsafe crossings based on the current locations of pedestrian access, as well as refuge within a pedestrian island potentially in the future to avoid conflicts between high-speed vehicles and crossing pedestrians in this locale. The proposed crossing and associated rectangular rapid flashing beacon, I think we're all familiar with those, will serve as a traffic calming measure. We've heard a lot about those, certainly in the Main Street corridor recently, but particularly in the Pine Street corridor, where we expect residents to be regularly making this crossing. We're currently working with the engineering department to explore the feasibility and final construct location of the proposed crosswalk, and we'll hopefully be working to finalize a design in concurrence with this committee's process. And that will also be associated with the riverfront development and the pedestrian enhancements that it provides. I do want to just close by recognizing that the committee has a difficult task ahead of it, and certainly there'll be much conversation subsequent to this. And I want to commend the tremendous work that the other nonprofits and organizations have done and their requests before you this evening. But I would be remiss if I did not advocate for full allocation of the $100,000 towards this critical pedestrian connection. I'm available to answer any questions that the committee might have, and certainly if you have any questions after the hearing, I'm available to answer those as well. Thank you for your consideration of this important community project.
Thank you. And Ms. Baldwin, I see you've been waiting on Zoom. If you'd like to make public comment, testimony in favor.
Thank you very much. My name is Carol Baldwin. I'm the Executive Director of the Adult Learning Center located at 4 Lake Street in Nashua. I'm also a Nashua resident at 42 Diamondback Avenue in Nashua. The ALC is looking for seed money because we need to replace the roof on the building that we own at 4 Lake Street. It was sold to us from the city in 1986. And we've been renovating it ever since. We are currently serving close to 900 students from 75 countries in our ESL program. We know from past history, when you've helped us with seed money, is that also entices private donors to donate to us. We are also leveraging the fact that this is our 50th year of existence, and we will be having a fundraiser in the fall of October of this year. Thank you very much for considering my proposal.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment in favor of the resolution?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I have a couple of questions, and I am in favor of all of these initiatives. I happened to see Mr. Sullivan spoke about the crosswalk. I just can't find where it was a $100,000 project. I see a crosswalk in this plan for essentially $31,000. So I didn't know where that was actually located or what he was referring to on that plan. Did that get added after?
As it is public comment, we can take up your questions when we get to the...
Well, it's a hearing, isn't it?
Yes.
We're supposed to be able to ask
you.
questions in a hearing, aren't we?
You can make your testimony in favor of it, but we can't bring everybody up and answer questions one by one.
Well, that's what we've been told a hearing is for, to be able to ask questions and get answers. That's what the law says.
Well, we have your questions, and then we can address them after.
Okay, so I can't find where the $100,000 is. And as I look at all of these initiatives, it looks to me like the start of this proposal talks about $764,000 of money being available. And as I just quickly scan through the 1 through 14 items, it looks like they add up to about that amount of money. So it sort of makes sense to me. The next thing is a home activities grant, annual grant of $427,000 that's identified in there. And one of those items is the affordable housing development money for $265,000. That's the bulk of the money out of the 4 programs that's being spent. And my question with this is, do we have affordable housing developments that are earmarked for this money? And where we just passed an ordinance for affordable housing, can units that are being built in with developments that are being done, are they eligible for this grant money? Let's say a builder has to put in 4 affordable housing units in an apartment complex that has 40 or whatever our rule was. I can't remember if it was 10% or 15%. Are those 4 units eligible? And can you only spend the money, this portion of the money, if you have done before you start your building process, meaning you can't go back and apply it if you've already done some construction. So I'm just curious, since that's the bulk of the $427,000 that's allocated, if we have specific affordable housing developments in mind that are going to be accessing that block grant money. Thank you.
Is there any additional testimony in favor of R22-025? Seeing none, I will now take testimony in opposition. Don't see anybody on Zoom, and I don't see anybody in the chamber approaching the mic. So a second call for testimony in favor. Anyone with additional comments to make? And then testimony in opposition. All right, without objection, I will declare the public hearing closed at
7:22?
7:22 p.m. But we will continue,
Do we need to do a voice vote on that?
yeah, I think we should do a voice vote,
Yeah.
and then we'll convene our regular meeting.
Yeah. You need to say all those in favor.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, then the
That's
hearing is
usually-
closed. I'm so used to doing the roll call vote.
I know.
All right, so we now will open the regular meeting. If there is public comment, feel free to approach the mic, make your public comment.
Yes, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I object to your process. I think it's wrong to not answer questions when they're raised in a hearing. I think that's what the law requires, because if I didn't get satisfactory answers, I could come back and give second input, or I could object to what's being done. But I can't even do that because I thought you were going to actually give answers when I sat down. I guess the answers are going to come in the regular meeting, but now the hearing's closed. And you always have timed people in hearings, which I don't think you should be doing. That is stopped, but you hit the buzzer, and I went back and looked at the minutes, and hearings have been timed for 3 minutes, which I don't think is right either. So I'm not certain how it works, but in the past, questions have been asked and answered in public hearings. When we go to the budget public hearing, there's a lot of people asking questions at that hearing, and you always answer them. Thank you.
Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we had a presentation scheduled for our agenda from the Environmental Health Department. I received a communication from Director Bagley saying that she would like us to table that until the next meeting. I do see her on Zoom, so I don't know if she's changed her mind or in the absence of anything. Director Bagley, can you hear or see us?
Yes, good evening, Alderman Lopez. No, we still need time to put that together and would like to request that the agenda item be moved to the next Human Affairs meeting, and we should be available in conjunction with the other departments to present information to the Human Affairs Committee.
Okay, so without objection, we'll just table that until the next agenda.
Thank you.
I can answer the questions that Ms. Ortolano pose to the committee. If I can take a shot at it. So the money in here for affordable housing has to be, it can't be a project that's already started. And it has to be a CHODO, which is a community housing development organization like Southern New Hampshire Services, or they have to apply for that money. So it's not anybody that can just, halfway through a project decide they want to come in and get money. It has to be that certain type of organization that applies for that money. It has to be affordable. I think that answers everything.
It did well, thank you.
You're welcome.
To that point, if Director Sullivan and Ms. Chisholm would like to probably have a seat, just because I think we're going to have a lot of questions. Our main piece of business here is actually that legislation.
There were no communications.
Oh, sorry, we didn't go through the process. I was just inviting them.
There are no communications, and there's no unfinished business.
There was communication from Ms. Chisholm in the form of providing this spreadsheet and a link to the applications. I think if there's no objection from the board or from the committee, we could just have those attached to the minutes as a separate communication.
I agree.
Okay. I think that would probably give more context. We did receive those today, so I know committee members have started reviewing it to get more information about those specific projects that were involved. I know specific questions were asked about the crosswalk, the expenses. Director Sullivan, I believe you are here representing that project. Do you happen to have any?
I am, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do we have to make
you're
a
right.
motion?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I started to announce it, but we actually have to have a motion on the table. So I will entertain a motion to
Was it for final passage or something? Yeah.
recommend final passage.
Let me read it though. R 22-025, authorizing the mayor to apply for and expend the community development block grant, Cdbg, and home investment partnership program funds for fiscal year 2023. Mr. Chairman, I motion to recommend, actually it says tabling, until May 2nd, 2022 meeting. Did you want to table it, or do we want to? We want to.
President Wilshire could clarify
And
that
then
we
we
should
table
table it, but at the same time, we have to open the discussion. So.
Okay, so I recommend passage of R-22-025.
Okay, and so we did plan to have convened again for May 2nd, after we've had a chance to review the material that we have additional conversation tonight. So that should be something that we all expect to be able to do, but Alderman Wilshire, I believe a table is a non-debatable motion, or?
Well, we're not gonna
we did
table it
table
until
the
the end of.
motion.
Okay, so
We've
that's
just-
why I don't want to
discuss
have
it
that
and then
motion until
table it, yes.
we've had the
Correct.
discussion.
Correct.
Okay,
Alderman Lopez, I just don't know if you could hear me. I just wanted to speak to one of the other questions that are just general. So just so the public understands, the way this works is we start with some numbers in that document, but it's not necessarily what we're going to allocate. That's what we're talking about right now. So where you saw the 100,000, that's the request. And we just plugged in, if everybody got it, whereas the whole is 70,000. So the request from his department is 100,000. And we're going to sit here and figure out where we put the money.
which is complicated by the fact that we don't actually know how much we get.
Exactly. It's all an estimate at this point.
But we're making a plan, and then
We'll
we'll
work
refine
on
it
it.
as we go.
Then we edit it, we'll amend. Alderman Wilshire.
Can I ask a question of Deb Chisholm or Matt Sullivan? I don't know who would have the UPD budget for FY '23? And if there's any carryover due to the vacancy in the director's position?
I think we're going to both have to speak to that. The way that our budget is currently set up, we have put in funding for the same level as was previously with the previous department director, in the event that we hired somebody who was of equal caliber. Not that that was likely, because Carrie was great, but We have the way the budget is set up, we do have that money in there. I will tell you that the way that the budget looks right now, we've got a little bit, the numbers that you see in that spreadsheet for urban programs is a 20% and a 10% of CDBG and home funding, regardless of what our internal budget is with benefits and other miscellaneous items.
Okay, so may I follow?
Yep.
My question was, did you fund the position in your FY '23 budget with money left over from the FY '22 budget?
No.
So where is that money?
We have not determined how to allocate that money, but we did not plan to fund the FY 2023 manager position with 2022 dollars.
Okay.
It would also not fully fund the position.
No, I didn't know if you maybe carried over 20,000, I'm just throwing numbers, and then put 70 in your budget for the, I wasn't sure.
No, that's a very fair question. That is not the way that we
Okay.
designed the budget for this year.
So what happens to the funds that were allocated to the admin piece in the FY '22 budget that did not get spent on admin?
Yep. My belief is that those would be available to potentially be recommitted or reallocated to other
Reprogrammed?
projects, potentially reprogrammed. But I think we need to provide more information to the committee before that's done. We also need to have a better understanding based on the fact that we do anticipate bringing on a new manager within the fiscal year. So we're not certain what that number is, but the answer is yes. I think there'll be options there for additional monies.
Then can we still get a copy of the FY '23 budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
To President Wilshire's point, if I understand the implications, that would also be helpful to know in the context of if we have more people needing money than we have ability to allocate it for, if the department has additional funding, we'd probably be looking to see how that impacts that.
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you. To the spreadsheet that you had sent, there were two items that I assume that you are putting in there as from reprogramming dollars. Is that correct? The 2022 Plus Company ADA bathroom rehab and the 2022 Nashua Center HVAC totaling of $55,000. Is that, when you're talking about the reprogramming, would that be some of the funding from the UDP administrator and so on? Is that where you plan on getting those funds, or is this
No, those
the
funds
leftover
are,
dollars?
those are specifically from projects from last year that did not use the funding that they were.
Okay, so this
Just
is
as a
giving
point of
back.
order,
upon-
Ms. Chisholm,
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
and Director Sullivan, if you guys start to speak or respond, just make sure you either give your name or your address just so that the transcriber knows who it is.
Yep.
If we go back and forth, it could get confusing for someone listening.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Alderman Clee speaking, because I know I didn't ask you to acknowledge me, but, so the $55,000 is what's left over that was not used, and we'll be reprogramming it this year for other projects, is what you're saying. Thank you. I just want to make sure I cleared that.
Okay.
Question.
Alderman Wilshire?
So is that part of the 764,000, or is that in addition to? And did you take that into account in the spreadsheet?
Yes.
You did.
This is Deb Chisholm. Yes, that's
Thank you.
part of the total of 764.
Part of the 764?
Yes.
No,
Alderman Wilshire?
sorry. That doesn't make sense, right? Because if we got 764,000 last year, and that's what we're budgeting for in this committee, right? The 764, then wouldn't we add the 55 to that?
They already did.
Oh, they already did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Director Sullivan, do you want to give any comments about the crosswalk that was particularly identified?
I believe that Alderwoman Kelly addressed this during her comments, but there's an administrative exercise that goes into creating the legislation and the amounts that are included in the legislation. As part of that process through community development, the $100,000 request for the crosswalk was ultimately pared down. That's been a common practice for city projects in order to represent full funding of the requests from nonprofits and other organizations. However, as you heard, my interest is in fully funding all of the projects in a world outside of maybe the reality that we live in. But certainly we did pare down that request to ensure that the existing year funding and the proposed funding were completely in alignment, hence the reduction that's included within the legislation.
Okay. Now, if I understand this right, the spreadsheets that we have doesn't account for the additional funding that may be left over from last year's. Would it be appropriate to introduce that to us at the May 2nd meeting, where we're able to look at the full picture and determine how things are going to be allocated?
This is Matt Sullivan, and the answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Alderman Kelly.
Thank you. I actually had a couple of questions. Some of the things that I know are in here as sort of the matter of where we were the owner occupied housing improvement and the rental improvement program. I believe you spoke about it last time, but I just wanted to have it reiterated where they were at. I think one was more used than it was last year, and like what's in those currently.
And I may ask for Ms. Chisholm to comment only because I think she answered this question at the last meeting, and I may ask her to jump in there. I do want to, maybe if I could, this is Matt Sullivan, just correct one other, or not correct, but provide a bit more information about one of the public comments. The monies contained within here related to affordable housing, those are completely independent from any planned contributions to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from ARPA dollars, any existing monies within the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that was created just a year ago. This is a completely independent pool of monies available for affordable housing. And I say that particularly because the alderman will likely be hearing more information related to both the ARPA dollar allocation and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund over the coming months. So this is a different available sum of monies.
Director Sullivan, would it be, sorry, Alderman Kelly,
Okay,
next. Would it be possible for next month's or our next meeting to also identify ones that either might be eligible or at least have already expressed interest in that, so that we know if somebody's applying for funds, if we're their only hope right now versus them having other possibilities?
Alderman Lopez, Matt Sullivan, I would just, are you referring to the use of the affordable housing development monies within this program and potential applicants? I think we can certainly try to provide some candidates for those monies, but we are not certain at this point in time who those entities will be. What we could provide is additional information about past applicants to the program and awards to give you a sense of who might be approaching the city for funding moving forward.
Okay, and I recognize that in the presentation, if it looks like you're too closely identifying ways things could be done, it could be misconstrued as like advocating for one or the other. So maybe having conversations with applicants or so that they can announce in public comment that they could accept partial funding or something along those lines. Or otherwise just being ready if one of us asks about it to be able to say they could.
Certainly.
Alderman Kelly was waiting and then Alderman Bush.
And we still haven't answered my original question, but I'm going to tack on to that really quickly. Affordable housing development under the home grant funds, that has a lot more strings, as I remember correctly. So if someone who might, qualify for this has more hoops to jump through versus what will come through in terms of the ARPA or the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, correct?
That is correct. That's a very simple and way to break down the fundamentals. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, although the guidelines have not been set, is going to be a very flexible program, particularly from an income perspective and a uses perspective, whereas these dollars are much more constrained than what we anticipate that fund will look like.
Alderman Wilshire.
Thank you. There is a difference between the Cdbg being a one-time thing and the home funds being a rolling thing. So we don't have to identify. I mean, it's great if you know who might need it, but that's an ongoing. It's not like Cdbg where you make a decision and it's done. That just is open all the time. So.
And Director Sullivan, anything to add?
Nothing to add. That's
I saw your
absolutely
hand
correct.
going up and then I realized you're holding a cup, so.
No, that's okay. I do want to make sure we address Alderwoman Kelly's questions from before, and I'm not sure, when Ms. Chisholm is ready, I know that she had an answer from last time, but she may not recall what the answer was. But
if you'd like, we've gone.
That was a great question, but we'll have an answer before the end of the meeting, certainly.
Okay.
Well, this is Deb Chisholm. To address Alderwoman Kelly's question about rental improvement program versus owner-occupied housing, the rental improvement program has a lot of money left over. We did not get a lot of applicants. I don't think we got any applicants over the last year for that CDBG rental improvement program. So there is some money that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't get reprogrammed like it would if it was something we had given to a nonprofit. It stays in the system. So we do have some money that's still sitting in there. The owner-occupied housing improvement, I believe at this point is pretty close to expended. And I'm hopeful that's the answer I gave you the last time.
I see Alderman Quay has her hand up.
Thank you, Chairman Lopez. And I know we talked about this at the last meeting also, you said that there was money left over in rental and that we needed more in the owner-occupied, so perhaps we should fund them a little differently. But I remember we had the discussion of, was it not, because the word didn't get out there. In other words, those that owned rental property weren't aware of this program because it was so new. So is that why it wasn't used? Yes.
Ms. Chisholm? Oh, I'm sorry, Director Sullivan.
Yes.
Just to brief, that's
would just say
exactly
on
what we had discussed. This is Matt Sullivan. That is exactly what we had discussed. We had discussed possible opportunities through the code enforcement department's efforts to maintain a list of property managers, that we might be able to use that list to do a better outreach campaign for those monies. And we did very much acknowledge that those efforts could have been stronger during the past fiscal year, and that may have led to underuse of those monies. And so we had also, I think, contemplated a modification to the funding. We would not rush to make any changes at this point in time. We really want to make a best effort as far as outreach and see whether we continue to have this balance issue between use of the two funds.
May I have a follow-up? Sure. Thank you. In respect to that, one of the things that I know there are issues of people's furnaces and so on going with this, the rental properties and so on, but those little nasty critters that we call bed bugs are also a big issue that hits landlords, especially those in the lower income, very hard, trying to mitigate them. It's not their fault that they got brought in, but they're the ones that have to. Would this program help them with that, or would it only be specifically for like a furnace that had to be replaced, or windows or something of that nature?
Director Sullivan?
I am not able to answer that question, and that speaks to perhaps my newness in the position, but I am not sure of the answer to that, and I'm happy to get clarification back to the committee.
Thank you.
But I expect
if,
that. I expect
Mr.
that
McKinney is going to be here next
That's correct.
month. We should probably preserve that and make a note to ask him that. Alderman Moran?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a restriction on if someone gets the rental improvement program or the for the private homes, like if they sell their house 6 months later, what happens to those funds?
This is Deb Chisholm. They're required to pay those funds back within a certain time period. I don't want to place a guess because I thought it was a 20-year lien that we would put on the property.
Thank you. New alderman questions. I'm sure these answers have been asked before.
Well,
That's why we want the presentations, though. Alderman Wiltshire?
It's the rental improvement program that no money has been spent out of?
That's what I heard.
That is correct.
So you're
Yes.
asking for another 125 this year for that program?
We are.
Okay.
Swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
Director Sullivan, I have two questions. One is speculative, and so I will just put it out as a rhetorical question. You can answer it if you choose to, but is it also possible that some of the individuals who might have needed to apply for funds for rental properties may have not been able to necessarily engage in projects or execute in projects when there's a moratorium on evictions, and was a little uncertain as to whether there would be somebody vacating the apartment or anywhere for them to go? And then additionally, what institutions are eligible for the rental property? Do you have to be a private property owner, or would like a nonprofit organization that rents also be eligible?
Matt Sullivan speaking to that just briefly. So I think there are several factors on the lack of use of the rental monies. Certainly vacancy rates are an issue. I think cost of materials and other construction issues also potentially contributed to lack of application for projects. Folks thinking that they're not prepared to make those improvements based on current market conditions. Relative to the second question about entities and their eligibility for application, to the program. Another question I'll have to get back to the committee on, again, lack of expertise in this area. I'll have to provide some further guidance. Alderman Wilshire may be able to provide additional feedback on this, but I'm not clear what the guidelines are. Specifically, what I believe you're referring to is whether LLCs or the like are in property ownership, or whether it's restricted to single owners.
And I would certainly be interested in finding out if anyone's actually turned away. So we are typically entertaining questions from individuals that are members of the committee, but I noticed that one of the nonprofit applicants has raised his hand. Director Reinke, do you have a question?
No, thank you so much, and this is a, perhaps a Jeopardy type question. But, so again, my name is Michael Reinke. I'm resident of 35 Locke Street. I'm the executive director for the Nashua Soup Kitchen Shelter. I'm wondering, it's been our experience that over the past year, almost 2 years, that the influx of rental assistance from the federal government has meant there's been a lot less turnover. And I know that our organization, we have budgeted, how can we help people pay utilities, pay rent, things like that. That hasn't been expended, not because there hasn't been a need, there's been other needs, but that hasn't been the specific need. And I guess my question might be, is it possible that because of the other assistance that's been available, we haven't seen the turnover, and without seeing the turnover, maybe we haven't seen the requests for repairs that we might ordinarily see, and now as we're gonna see more turnover, perhaps there might be an increase in need, and so that might justify the request for the additional dollars. So that was just my question to the Alderman.
Thank you for elaborating. That was actually sort of what I was implying, but Alderman Wilshire, I see you have a question.
As far as turnover, I mean, where would people go? There's zero vacancy. I mean, I don't see turnover happening for a while. Having been in the real estate business myself for a while, I think we're gonna be stuck where we are for a while. Anyway, just thought
I also think it would be a little difficult to like replace windows or that kind of stuff if the person's living in the apartment. So those are definitely things to consider. Hopefully having Bill McKinney present will be helpful. Alderman Kelly, I saw your hand up.
I wanted to just add an additional, I think it's been really hard to get contractors out, and because of supply chains, the prices have been really high, so I imagine that people are also waiting on improvements right now, especially if it's not a whole house renovation. It's probably hard to get someone to want to come do just your windows, and then wait for them for 6 months to come. Not that I'm going through that at my house at all.
Alderman Glee?
I think Alderman Timmons had her hand up first.
Well, I really did, but you guys are answering all the questions I would have asked. So that's one question. I do have one other question. Out of that 125,000, and you get another 250, another 125, that would be 250. Is there a max on this on homeowners or a landlord to borrow?
Per owner or per applicant? I don't know the answer to that. Seems to be my common theme for the evening, but I'm happy to get an answer back to the committee for your consideration. But I'm not certain of the maximum allowable application to the program. And I'm assuming what you're getting at is might there be an ability for a large application to be filed and take up a substantial portion of those dollars? I'd be happy to get an answer back to you.
Director Sullivan, I had requested that the Environmental Health Department and the Code Enforcement Departments do presentations on the services and different activities that they do, thinking that typically when we're looking at housing-related issues, it's good for the public to know what we do as a city, and what's available and who to talk to, but then it's also good for landlords to know what their resources are and what their supports are. So this seems like it might be an opportunity for you to answer all the questions with a presentation that goes with the other presentations.
And I would just, I would add to that, Chairman Lopez. I would add to that. Chairman Lopez and I had a conversation this afternoon and morning as well. The objective of the May 9th meeting of the committee is to do just that, to provide a coordinated presentation opportunity for environmental health, building inspection or building safety, and code enforcement to speak to just these issues. And what I think may be prudent for that evening is to, as part of the presentation, provide responses to some of the questions that we're receiving this evening. So for those that we're unable to answer, we'd be happy to include some slides in that presentation directly addressing those questions. So what I'm saying is keep it coming. You can stump me, that's all right. But we will have answers to those questions at the next meeting of the committee where that presentation happens.
I see 3 hands up, but I would just like to comment in Director Sullivan's defense that he did come to the meeting to tell us and to be present for it. And I heard back from other departments that they weren't ready for that. So just because he's here on the hot seat doesn't mean that his department is any less ready or able. It just means that there's a lot going on in the city, and we will be more prepared to have a presentation. As chair, I did think it would probably be a good idea to have those presentations alongside the CDBG, and we're working on it. I think, were you keeping a speaker list? I think Alderman Moran and then...
Oh, okay.
So Alderman Moran?
I just have a couple of questions. I don't have it in front of me. I haven't seen it since this morning in my email. But how much money is in the home buyers, homeowners for moderate to low income?
$125,000.
Maybe
This is very small, so I'm going to give it to
No, that's the rental
Thank you. I just
improvement
forgot
program.
I forgot to.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
the homeowners is 50,000.
50,000 for owner occupied housing
Correct.
and 125,000 for rental improvement.
So maybe just, that's what I thought it was,
Yeah.
and
Yes,
from my
that's-
memory of like 9 hours ago. Just hearing the conversation, maybe a statement I could make versus a question. Wouldn't it be more wise to shift more funds over to the homeowner piece to help offset low and moderate homeowners who are gonna see an increase in their taxes coming up with the home revaluations? You know, the landlords are technically a business, and the low to moderate homeowners are not a business, and could probably benefit from more funds if their water heater breaks than a landlord.
It's always complex because we need to know the whole scope in order to make decisions, but sometimes a missing piece is, you know, something that we might assume to be one thing, but it's another. So that's where it'd be really good to know who's applying and if it's just that we haven't told enough people. Alderman Wilshire?
Yeah, this owner occupied has been in this since 20+ years ago when I started chairing this committee. And it always seems to be enough year to year. Someone's furnace might go, if they're low income, we'll help them buy a furnace or a hot water heater or something, a roof. But it seems to always, I mean, they haven't come back year after year asking for a lot more money or more money, so it seems to be, the need seems to be being met, is I guess what I'm saying.
Sorry.
One follow-up, and then
I guess then my only concern to that would be inflation, the rising cost of home repairs that are different than even last year. Try to price a water heater recently, and it's skyrocketed since last year. So.
stuck on the evergreen. Alderman Kelly, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. I was just mentioning to Alderman Moran, this committee's quite fun because we have to go through and figure out which ones get fully allocated, and fun is in quotes there, when there's so much need. I was going to recommend, just for purposes of moving forward, that we bring the rental improvement down to $55,797, and then everything would be fully funded. I think that the Pine Street pedestrian crossing is really, really important, especially with the work that's going to be happening downtown. And it was something that I personally really gave some voice to because I lived in Clock Tower for a long time. So getting from Clock Tower, once we have that beautiful Riverwalk, I walked it today with my designer, and getting from there over to the park is going to be really important, and feeling safe there, and increasing the walkability. That's something we've talked a lot about in the city. So I think I would love to see that happen for now, and then if we get more than we were then we can try to make that rental improvement program whole. But if I remember correctly, Ms. Chisholm said that there's money left over in there right now, and I think that the sidewalk is an immediate and one-time need that really needs to be taken care of.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with what Alderman Kelly just said about at least switching off some of the funds and so on to that. As we were talking here, a message came up on my computer here, and it was from a constituent that said, wow, I didn't know that the city gave away money for someone who needed a water heater. And I just want to make it very clear that these funds are loan programs that you must qualify for and put in. And to a question that was asked previously when I spoke to the previous director, I believe there are certain stipulations and certain limits to different aspects, as well as how often you can get them, the same applicant and so on. So there's a lot of different criteria that I'm sure that Director Sullivan will be bringing to us, but just for clarity to the public that's listening, this is not the money, the city buying someone a water heater or an HVAC system or helping somebody with the bed bug problem. It is a loan program that becomes self-sufficient. As they pay it back, it goes back into the funds and so on, and it becomes kind of an account of that nature. So just to make it very clear, this is not a handout as much as it's a helping loan. I believe it's a lower interest rate type of loan and so on. So maybe Director Sullivan could explain it a little bit, Mr. Chairman.
Director Sullivan, you have comments?
I would just note that if you do have the resolution in front of you, you'll see within it that there are certain, under the owner-occupied opportunities, there are certain grants that are available rather than loan repayment programs for those at a certain area median income. And so typically they are a deferred payment loan at 0% interest, but there are some grant monies, pure grant monies available for lower income households as part of that owner-occupied housing program as well.
Just so that I'm clear, the program is funded through Cdbg funds or funded from the repayments from the loan?
The program is funded through Cdbg funds.
Okay, and then where do the loan repayments go to?
They are circled through the program, I believe, but I can get you more details on that. My understanding is that they circulate back into the program. Specifically how, specifically.
So I kind of knew that answer, I was setting you up for it, but I didn't.
No, but I think your question is a good one in the sense of how those funds are specifically used as they circulate back into the program. And so I can provide a little more detail and context around that at your upcoming meeting, but the answer is yes, they do go back into the program.
If we were to do some sort of flow chart, it would be, Director Sullivan pays taxes to Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam eventually decides to give it back to Nashua. Nashua uses it for a person who needs water heater. Person who needs water heater pays back City of Nashua.
Yes, functionally, yes.
Simple chart.
Simple chart, that would be a very simple version, yes. But I can provide a little more detail around that at the next meeting.
I just wanted to make the point that in New Hampshire particularly, we're one of those states that pays out more in tax than we necessarily get back because of our state size. So having the city be able to provide a service that the grant is designed for and is dispersed for, and then additionally generate return that can be invested to augment more programs is a good idea as far as I'm concerned. I see Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe a general question. So why can't the pedestrian crosswalk be paid for by future dollars from the infrastructure money that we would be getting
From the
not Build Back Better, whatever the bipartisan infrastructure bill was, that we don't know what those funds would be. But I guess my question is, why would we take it from the community grant if we could potentially have funds available in the future?
If I may, Mr. Chair. There are certainly other funding opportunities, the ARPA dollars being one, potential monies through Build Back Better. We viewed this as a project that would fit within the guidelines of benefit to low to moderate income, whereas some of our other projects may not. And so is there an opportunity for other funding? There absolutely is. And so I want to be clear that we would certainly accept if all $100,000 were not available to the request, but we do feel there's clear and true benefit to low to moderate households, as well as those that are, again, unhoused, perhaps, that use this crossing. And so we view this as a good fit for the program, but there are potential funding opportunities beyond this.
That makes sense, the low to moderate income designation. Thank you.
Just for some area context, and maybe Director Sullivan, I don't know if you have details on this, but that section is the initial part of the Broad Street Parkway, Pine Street extension. You can't exactly cross anywhere because there's a canal, so you could cross and then be like, have to go down the street to where you can actually get to where you're trying to go. So people tend to try to cross right where the driveways are, which are actually more designed for cars. And that's an area that parkway, I guess it's referred to as an industrial park, but it has organizations like Stepping Stones, which works with homeless youth, Hearts, which is a peer support program, the Picker Artists, the there's Crossways Church over there, so there are a lot of people that would do that. And when we do large driveway thoroughfare things through residential neighborhoods, you end up dividing it, but that doesn't change the needs of people living in that area to go from one side or the other. So Director Sullivan, if you want to comment on that, and then maybe, do you have any details about what's involved? I'm assuming not a stoplight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. And thank you for noting what I would argue are very direct benefits to a lot of the area nonprofits that are located at Pine Street Extension. There are other locations. It's not only residents and folks using downtown that are crossing over to Mine Falls, it's also they're making that crossing to access services that are provided in the buildings on the western side of Pine Street there. Further, I would note that potential redevelopment of the NIMCO property is an opportunity, albeit an unknown one, to add more residential, institutional, or commercial users that we anticipate would be using this pedestrian crossing. Alderman Lopez, to your point, there are limited pedestrian crossing opportunities in this area. There's one located next to the smokestack, obviously, as you move north towards the Parkway. There's also one located to the south, towards the intersection of Central and Pine. There are several crossings in that location, but there's a gap between those two, and that's where we're seeing a lot of pedestrian crossing happening. If you've driven the Parkway, try to take note of it. There are a lot of folks running across there. It creates a very unsafe environment. The other problem is that we know what the posted speed limit is in the Broad Street Parkway. We may all not follow it, and we tend to not follow it as we enter the downtown area. And so speed is a very real issue that we believe some provision of pedestrian infrastructure would assist with. What's involved is just a painted crosswalk, but also a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is the push button crossings that you see being implemented through Main Street and other corridors. We've had some other conversations about designs with mast arms, but we think the RRFB is the preferred option. And again, we price this out at about $100,000. Infrastructure is not cheap like we're seeing in other construction industries, but we believe this crossing would really be in the locale, either directly across from the exit of Clock Tower Place onto Pine Street or just north of there. And we're currently in conversations with the engineering department about what the preferred design will be. But I will note to Alderman Kelly's comments before, this is being actually contemplated as part of the Riverfront project, at least as a pedestrian connection opportunity associated with those efforts.
To that point, I always obey the speed limit on my Segway, which doesn't go over 12 miles, so it never breaks anything. But when I'm on foot, analog walking as it were, being able to look way down the distance for the crosswalk that I have to walk to, and then right across the street to the place that I'm actually trying to go to, which is essentially surrounded by a moat, and you can only go through it in that area, is very tempting to try to cross. So is the crossing that you have designed or that you're requesting funding for, is that going to line up with that, or is it going to line up with riverfront recreational use?
Ideally both. I think the answer is, one of the, I think, remaining concerns, even in the event that this crosswalk is constructed, is the pedestrian connection across from Myrtle Street over at that specific crossing. Mm-hmm. We will not remedy that issue. And so I think for pedestrians from Monahan Manor, it may still be challenging to get them to cross safely in the event that additional pedestrian infrastructure is not created. But certainly those from Clock Tower and those of Pine Street Extension, I believe this will provide for their needs. It's viewed as sort of, we've talked about it as mid-block, but really what we're talking about is mid-block between the two existing crossings on either side. It actually is being created at an intersection. But to your point, when we as planners or traffic engineers, our first job is to look at where are people making the crossing and can we provide a crosswalk in that exact location. This isn't perfect, but it's about as close as we can come to doing that. And so I certainly do think that it will provide safe passage for a percentage of the crossings being done between the two existing crosswalks. To what percentage, I can't say specifically.
But we don't want to wait and make it 0% and then have somebody get hit.
That's right.
Alderman Moran?
I just want to, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to follow up on something that Alderman Kelly suggested. It was reducing the rental down to $75,000.
May I speak? I had recommended bringing it down to $55,797, which would fully fund and putting that into the Pine Street pedestrian crossing. So that would fully fund the crossing.
Got it.
I should say as chair, in the interest of not having like amendments to amendments to amendments that were amended, and with this many items on it, we should have conversations about things before formal.
Oh, I'm not offering any amendments.
Yeah.
I know, I'm just saying it out loud so that everybody is on the same page, that
And that's why.
we want to be a little forward thinking, because ultimately we're going to table this and then bring it back May 2nd.
I'm just over here doing math. I want to make sure my numbers are right.
Yep, but then in addition to that calculation, it probably would be good to know if there's additional revenue from the urban funds director or some such places that we mentioned earlier. Because maybe nobody needs to be reduced.
Alderman Lopez, if I could.
Alderman Kelly.
So are you saying you don't want us to make any suggestions this evening? And
No,
go
I want
into
you to make
the-
suggestions, just don't put them as a motion necessarily.
I didn't make a motion on purpose, but I just wanted us to, like, do we want to leave it as is, or do we want to have some working plan for the May 2nd?
I would entertain the committee's will on this, but maybe Ms. Chisholm could update or amend the plan based on the suggestions that we have. That way they're able to make comments or presentations in that context rather than starting from scratch every meeting. Ms. Chisholm, does that work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Make sure I'm not speaking for Mike. Alderman Wisher.
Yeah, I think that this needs to get, money needs to go in these line items tonight. I really think they're looking for us to not finalize this, but get it as close as we can until the next meeting, and then make any adjustments based on anything they come back to us with.
That would be great.
Okay, so is that a starting point then with,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Alderman?
I agree with what Alderwoman Wilshire and Alderwoman Kelly has said, but I just wanted clarification from Alderwoman Kelly, if I may. Alderwoman Kelly, you had said 55,797 into the, taken from the rental improvement program,
No.
and the remaining difference of the 125,000 would be placed into the Pine Street pedestrian crossing. My mind went blank there for a second. I don't know what happened. But, so we're talking about a difference of 69,203, and right now we're sitting there with so you're saying add that to the 30,797 to make it whole to the 100.
Correct.
Okay.
So on the spreadsheet, I'm sorry, Alderman Kelly, is that okay? That's what I'm saying. So number 14 would become 55,797, which is the rental home improvement. And then line 15 would become 100,000. And that way, this program that we know has some leftover funds is still getting some, and if we get more, then we can readjust.
Okay, makes sense. Alderman
You look
Moran?
confused, Alderman Wilshire.
I would only make one change to that, is actually to drop it to even 50,000 and take the remainder of 5797 and move it to the owner occupied housing improvement. And that would actually come just slightly over inflation of like 9%.
Okay, Alderman Kelly? Alderman Wisher? And then
You're saying to swap.
Can we,
Swap.
I got it.
Oh, sorry.
no, you're good. Has that fund been expended for the year for the FY22 budget, the homeowner assistance fund?
That's what Ms. Chisholm said earlier, is it's completely expended.
This is Deb Chisholm. I think that it is almost entirely depleted at this point.
Thank you.
If not, there's a wait list
Oh,
of projects.
okay, thank you.
Alderman Cleave?
Yes, again, just looking for clarification. I'm playing with the spreadsheet as we've been talking. So to Alderman Moran's point, you're saying that in the owner-occupied housing improvement, we would put 55,000, fund it for 55,797, and that we would fund the rental improvement at 50,000, and per Alderwoman Kelly's point, put 100,000 into the Pine Street pedestrian crossing. Do I have that correct from?
That's my understanding.
And again, then we still don't have anything into contingency, but where we don't know where the true bottom line is, I think we should either consider putting something into contingency or hope that we get more so that we have something sitting in contingency.
That makes sense to me. Like I said, I'd be a little more comfortable if I knew the whole scope, but at least we can make a plan and and revise as we go. Alderman Kelly?
I believe that last year we kind of talked about contingency, and the discussion was it's not generally not rare that it is used, but I will ask for Director Sullivan's looking at me like crazy, but I feel like we had this discussion and it was like, well, like it's there, but it doesn't, we don't always have to tap into it. And I personally would feel, it'd be unfortunate to not be able to give the nonprofits what they need so we can put in contingency for something that may or may not happen. That's kind of a question to you.
Director Sullivan.
That was my thinking face, not my crazy face. So I hope they're not similar, but no. It's I have concerns about the lack of contingency just on construction costs, but we also are, it's pure speculation to assume that these projects may or may not need more funding. But I can't speak to the conversation that occurred last year relative to contingency. I would just, again, echo the comments of others that having an understanding not only of what the additional allocation might be, but what salary monies might be available from the FY 2022 urban programs budget, that may serve as a convenient contingency for some of these projects to at least have those monies available. So certainly having an idea of what that figure is for the next meeting will be helpful in the context of contingency.
I would just echo those comments. My only concern would be if we don't fully fund the contingency fund, but we fully fund a city project that could get funding potentially from other places as well, then it might be a situation where nonprofits might not have the contingency they need. Alderman Clee.
Thank you. I liked what Director Sullivan had commented about perhaps the monies not spent on that salary could be put into contingency. I also think to Alderwoman Kelly's comment, she's absolutely right. We did speak about contingency, and I do believe that it was discussed as that we tend not to use it. I think this year's going to be very different because we don't know what tomorrow brings. The cost of everything rises with every breath we take. And I would hate for a project to not be able to be funded because we didn't have anything that we could have possibly thrown at it to help it in that respect. So I think this year more than ever, and it is going to be important to have a contingency. But this question would be to Ms. Chisholm. The amounts that you have here for the 18 April column of this spreadsheet, these are the monies as per requested by the applicants, correct? This is the exact amount that they've asked for, and I haven't had a chance to double check to look at their application and so on. So based on that, we're hitting the $764,000 that we are assuming that we're going to get. And I see Director Sullivan has his pen raised.
With the exception of the Pine Street crosswalk, that project in the 418 column is represented by the $30,797 rather than the full $100,000 request. That's the only exception to all requests being shown.
Follow up?
Alderman Clee.
Thank you. Just as a quick follow-up is that having said that, with the monies that we've just kind of talked, been ballparking, passed around, we would be funding everything as was described in the 418, just moving monies between the owner-occupied, the rental improvement, and the Pine Street. That would still keep us whole at $764,000 and still be able to hit each of these projects with the monies they've asked. That's the question that I wanted to ask. We've been tossing monies around for those three items. I just wanted to make sure that all the other projects have been funded per their request before we consider the Pine Street pedestrian crossing. And I think Alderman Wilshire probably has a comment.
Yeah, when I saw the spreadsheet, I said, oh, that's everything they asked for except for the Pine Street. But that was in the hopes of getting us to move this and get this, 90% planned out tonight so that we can move forward at the next meeting and pass a resolution. So, and send it back to the full board. It's timing.
Yep.
Is really what it is, so.
I'm 100% sure I'm the most pessimistic person in the room, but I'm just waiting for HUD to give us like 2/3 of what we've traditionally given, and then the other third with some crazy plan attached to it that we don't anticipate. So I think it's a good idea for us to have the conversation and everything, but I still don't believe this is going to work until we get the money. Alderman Kelly?
A couple of things. I was going to ask that question. I think that historically it's at least stayed the same. I don't think that it's been less many times. So that's one I wanted to just have someone confirm for me. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was contingencies. I know that Ms. Skeena, when she was here, worked really hard with these nonprofits to get some really tight numbers. And so oftentimes they're already out to bid getting a number back that's real for the project in real time. That doesn't mean that things aren't going to change even in, like you said, a blink of an eye, but I think that it has been the process in the past. And I would hope that people are building in contingencies a little bit higher than normal, given sort of the state of affairs. So those are my two questions. Is that true in terms of the process with nonprofits bringing numbers ahead? And have we gotten less than
Ms. Chisholm, can you answer that?
previous years?
This is Deb Chisholm. So to answer your question about contingencies, whether or not the applicants have put a contingency in their own request, I can't necessarily answer that question. That would be better answered perhaps by the nonprofits. What I can say is that we did this year, and it was also referred to by one of the nonprofits, that Mike Youngers from Urban Programs Department went out to many, if not all, of the applicants to sort of talk about what their projects were, to make sure we didn't end up with underfunded projects that are, you know, if you need a roof and you think it's going to be $20,000, you probably got a bad quote. And Mike is very construction oriented and has a very extensive background he owned his own construction company, so he's very knowledgeable about. So the idea was to make sure that the numbers that were coming in from the applicants were actual numbers, and that I'm certainly not saying we don't need a contingency, but we're getting better at getting numbers that are much more accurate. Does that answer?
It does answer my question, but if someone from the audience that has one in could talk about whether they've adjusted their contingencies, it'd be interesting to hear.
Come on up, name and address for the record, please.
Ashley from the Boys and Girls Club at One Positive Place. We did actually take Mike up on his offer to come to the club, walk him through the project, walk him through, here's what happened, here's kind of our process, here's where we're at, here are the quotes. He was super helpful in saying, like, yes, this makes sense, you did your due diligence. It's my first time, I've never had sewage backup at the club before, so it was my first time going through that process, and having him kind of say, yes, you've dotted your T's, cross your I's, was very, very helpful. I had two very different quotes, one that kind of said, rip everything out, start from scratch, and one that said, like, nope, here's a fix that you can do that will solve your issues, and he said, like, yep, these are two good quotes that kind of fit what you need. So having him come out and walk us through that process, at least for us at the club, was very, very beneficial. And he did say that we had room in our contingency, and he was the one who I said, like, this is the quote we got, is this what we should apply for? And he said yes, like, that he felt comfortable with that.
So just if I could clarify, so what you asked for was exactly what the quote was, or did you build in anything?
I believe we rounded up to the nearest dollar. So the quote was $13,500, we rounded up to $14,000.
Okay.
One of the other plans, which I think we have a written application for, I believe Ms. Baldwin from the Adult Learning Center referred to it as seed money and indicated that was a starter for a much larger fundraising project. So that's worth pointing out. Alderman Clee, I know you've been waiting.
Yeah, the reason that I had mentioned about the contingency was looking at the Gateway quote here. It originally showed $280,000, which was crossed off and changed to $8,985, and then it was put 2022 next to it. So we saw an increase in probably when they were originally kind of given a quote to having that built in, and it says January 31st. By the time they're going to be able to do this project, probably could be close to the summer, and there may be an increase. That's what triggered my brain into considering that we needed some contingencies, seeing that there was a potential that I don't know, and maybe they can explain why this was crossed off and put up with the specific date of January 31st. I think that the person who gave the estimate said this is a quote as of this date, and it could possibly potentially go up, which is why I wanted to. And I think there is somebody here from Gateway, and maybe they can address that.
Yes, Ruth Morissette from Gateway's Community Services. the original quote was from a year ago. And when we were applying this year, we asked them to reassess that quote because of the cost of materials and so forth. So that's why the original quote is updated.
So
Okay.
it was
Just a
reflective of
Quick que-
time.
Yes.
Alderman Kelly, Alderman Clee has a follow-up.
Yeah, just a real quick one. So what you're saying is that in that year from when you got that one to this one, there was about a little over $700 increase in the price, which is just shy, it's about like 9% of the overall project, which is, that's significant in my opinion. So that's why, again, I felt the need for us to have even a small contingency to help if your project went up overboard, that we could possibly help you with it rather than you having to squirrel around trying to, and lose your project. So that was my reason for the contingency, so.
It's also worth pointing out that we literally don't know when HUD's gonna give us a full answer yet. And their response was, you can at least start making a plan for 60 days longer. So the longer they take, the more prices might go up. Alderman,
I yield.
Wilshire and then Rand.
I yield.
So it's not unusual that we don't know what we're getting from HUD. It's not unusual at all. Most years, we don't. You know, it's, you know, sometime around May, we might get it, but, you know, I think a contingency would be, we'd be able to put something in contingency based on the vacancy in the department, or, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be $20,000 or $30,000, because I think people get quotes, and they get quotes close to the time that they are gonna apply, so I think the department has gotten pretty good at, you know, working in those parameters, so.
I appreciate the comment a lot, particularly because I didn't want to put Director Sullivan on the spot and be like, what have they done over the last couple of years? But I also know Alderman Wilshire, you have a lot of experience with this exact process. So it's good to know that we can be a little bit closer to the wire, and that this is just a plan that is not out of the ordinary. HUD isn't doing anything crazy or strange. I'm just being prudent. And then I also think I'm just a little bit mindful of, there was an incident a couple of years ago on the militia, you might remember it, where I believe the SURF money, the mayor at the time decided not to leave contingency money and then a plow broke. So I'm always mindful of that being a concern and not having contingency, but I also realize that you can't necessarily plan everything as though a disaster is gonna happen.
Right.
Alderman Rand, sorry.
So when it comes to contingencies, if we go forward, I can only see of all these projects to take it from, again, the rental and or the pedestrian crosswalk. Those I think are two options. One, because it hasn't even been used, the rental piece, and to continue to allocate something that we don't think is gonna be used in a tight housing market, I think is not wise, rollover market. And the other is the pedestrian crosswalk could have other potential funding, whether it's from, when it was budget season, from our actual city budgeting, or some other funds that come our direction. I just don't want to see any of the nonprofits lose any of their.
Director Sullivan, as the person representing the crosswalk and overseeing the rental program and possibly having the extra funding, do you have any?
I again am hesitant to suggest any reductions of any projects until we have a sense of the FY22 salary dollars that might be available, but I would otherwise agree that those are the projects that are likely to be decreased in order to meet the needs of the other nonprofits. But I am an optimist in opposition to perhaps Alderman Lopez. I believe that we may have enough money available to fund all the projects at 100% if we are able to tap into those FY22 salary dollars. In the event that we are not, for some reason, though, I would agree that a reduction to the rental program or the crosswalk project would be likely the most prudent of the committee to make.
Do you have an opinion as to which would be a better choice?
I do not feel comfortable commenting on that based on my involvement with the crosswalk and my representation of it this evening, and certainly my working relationship with the Economic Development Department.
Okay. Voting for it, but maybe not. Alderman Kelly?
I think we're kind of going round and round. I think
Yes.
allocations that we've talked about make sense as a starting point. I would say if we could have, perhaps when we come back on the second, specifically what's in the rental improvement program right now, I think that would help us in our final decisions. And if you could just confirm as well that the owner occupied is completely expended. I think those two pieces we could play with at the next meeting.
All right, Alderman Clee?
Yes, and to Alderwoman Kelly's point, I think that the fact that we kind of put dollars to those three, the owner occupied, the rental improvement program, and the Pine Street, that we somewhat make a recommendation, at least to the next meeting, that we fund it appropriately to the $55,797 in the owner occupied housing improvement, the $50,000 into the rental improvement program, and $100,000 into the Pine Street pedestrian crossing, leaving contingency at 0, hoping that maybe there will be some administrative dollars that could possibly go into that, and make that recommendation for them to move forward till we get that at the next meeting, and then table this.
Okay.
Would that work? I'm going to ask Alderman Wilshire whether or not that's the way we could do it.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, we've actually gone over.
Right.
We've say we had $750,000, and, in our draft resolution, we spent $780,000. And then when it came back to the committee, we had made the final adjustments before we sent it back to the full board.
Okay, so my understanding is everybody's comfortable with the numbers we've already figured out moving forward. Ms. Chisholm can do the summary, and Alderman Clee's been keeping careful, close backup anyway. So if we are all comfortable and there's no further discussion, can I have a motion to table?
I think we have to
We have to do the recommendation.
amend first.
Of
Yes.
those
You have
numbers.
to vote on
Wait,
the.
can I add to my comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman? Thank you. I would say that if there were monies left over, that we would consider placing them between the contingency, the rental improvement program, and the owner occupied program, considering that we're giving the monies to the organizations that as they asked for it. So we're not leaving. In the past, we've had programs. I remember one time the Adult Learning Center came in for windows that we just could not afford to pay for all of them, and we spoke to them and said, what would be the least amount that would help you get through, and we worked with it that way. It looks like, based on the dollar amount that the community development people have put in there, we're able to fund all of these programs as requested. It all comes down to the $764,000. And that being said, I think that those three recommendations, we should vote on those, and just, if we have any additional at the next meeting, consider either upping one of the ones that we've lowered, and possibly put something into contingencies, if that would.
Okay, so Alderman Wilshire, you're saying we need a formal motion?
I would
Okay.
go line by line and take a vote.
Yes.
Okay,
So
do we have to
that
go
they
line
can
by
put
line,
the
vote for each
resolution-
line?
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Do we have to go line by line for each line?
Well,
Each
there are
one?
only 14, plus you have to also consider the home funds.
Okay. Alderman Moran?
Let me see if I can do this in one motion. I
Alright.
motion to amend R22-025 to go line item for the request for the CDBG funds, line by line. Does that sound good?
It sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, would you read line by line?
Sure. I'll start right from the beginning, if that's under the requests. Is that where I should start, Alderman Wilshire? Yes. The public service estimated 15% cap at $99,600.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The UPD project delivery at $125,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The UPD administrative 20% cap at $141,800.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Owner occupied housing improvement, $55,797.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
The rental improvement program at $50,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The Pine Street pedestrian crossing at $100,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The Plus Company flooring at $15,623.
All those opposed?
No.
Just making sure I'm paying attention. All those in favor?
Aye.
This
Anybody
is
opposed?
Simon said.
I heard that first.
Okay. The Adult Learning Center roof, half cost at $75,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The Boys and Girls Club sewer pipe at $14,000.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
The National Children's Home insulation and sewer service at $23,195.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The National Soup Kitchens Quincy Street flooring at $30,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
One abstention. I'm on the board.
Thank you. Make a note that now.
Yep. Area Agency Gateways fencing, $8,985.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The Opportunity Networks windows at $25,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The home grant estimate at $427,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The administration cost at $42,700.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Alderman Timmons, you still voting over there?
The CHDO at $64,050.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The home buyer assistance at $55,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
The affordable housing development, $265,250.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Mr. Chairman, we've had unanimous votes on all of them, with the exception of one abstention for line 20, National Soup Kitchens, Quincy Street flooring.
Okay, so this is the plan that we have at the moment, but now we can table it until next month. Alderman Moran.
I have one question, and I would like to make that motion to table.
Okay.
I've wrote this down. The rolling housing funds, those end up going to other agencies at some point?
Director Sullivan?
I believe you're referring to the home funds.
Yes.
For the rolling housing monies. Those will ultimately be allocated to agencies, most likely, yes, but there are potentially other parties or recipients for those funds, and I'd be happy to provide a history of who those have been to you, if that would be helpful.
That would be great.
Okay. Yeah,
And
of course.
one final, how do you decide what agencies get those?
The home funds?
Yes.
It's an administrative process within the Urban Programs Department, but I can, again, provide further detail about how, maybe a flow chart to
Yeah,
that
that'd be
end
great.
would be helpful.
Yes.
Yes, I can absolutely do that. Yep.
I think that's also on the website, on the city's site.
I'm just curious
That's a great question.
how
Yeah.
the application process works. All right, so I motion to table R 22-025 as amended.
All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, and we are tabled until May 2nd for that piece of item. Madam Clerk, I kind of stepped on you when it came to
That's okay.
unfinished business and new business. You want to go through that?
There was, the unfinished business, none, and new business was the R 22-025.
Okay, and then
Right.
new business ordinances,
Okay. New business ordinances, none?
tabled in committee,
None?
general discussion. Anybody have items for general discussion? Okay.
Just want
Alderman
to,
Clee?
thank you, I just want to make a quick comment. Year after year that we've done this, it's kind of somewhat of a guessing game. We play with that number and we work backwards. This is the first time that I can remember, since I've been on the committee, this is my third term on it, that we've actually been able to pretty much fund all of those without having to play let's start with 50% and work our way up to them. So I think this is a good thing that we've been able to do this, and I hope that there is more money, and putting something back into those ones that we have depleted would be a good plan. So that's really all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, was that discussion?
That was just a general discussion.
Okay,
Alderman Lopez.
yep, Alderman Kelly.
Kelly.
Yeah, just want to echo that as well. I think there's a lot of really good programming that the city has brought forward and worked on funding in the past number of years, especially with us dealing with, having no vacancy, whatever, in the city. And I think some of these rehab programs have done really well. I also just I say this every year because I think it's really interesting that our city is one of the few that does it like this. A lot of cities just keep the money. So we actually open it up to this process and invite the nonprofits in, and it's a unique to Nashua thing. So I'm always really, really excited to do this because I think it's an interesting process, and it's nice to hear from what the city needs instead of just keeping it all.
I think it's also important to note that our city relies on nonprofits a lot. We are next to a state with much more sophisticated public support programs. Our nonprofits do a lot of the heavy lifting, and I think this is essential for a lot of them to make ends meet and keep things going. I know that the pandemic has really put a lot of them on the back foot, and that they're trying to reevaluate how to pursue their mission, what their resources are, how to reengage communities. So I am impressed that we have as much ability to meet needs as we have this year, but I also, again, being pessimistic, think there's probably more needs in the community, and I'm a little bit concerned that we don't have the same sort of logistical support for grant writing and development that we've had in the past. So I know, Director Sullivan, you have my sympathies for needing to fully staff, train, and equip a department, and then rebuild all of those partnerships that are often personality-driven with nonprofit organizations. Alderman Moran?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say that the city did a great job in partnering with nonprofits who are sustainable, that have programs that are sustainable, and are able to demonstrate that through the application process, the bidding. I'm glad to see that no nonprofits are being awarded money who don't have sustainable programs in the city, and whose CEOs don't make $500,000 a year. Thank you.
Alderman Wilshire.
Thank you. I would like to thank Director Sullivan and Deb Chisholm for the work they've put in on this. I mean, it's kind of new to both of them, and they've got a pretty good handle on it, so appreciate your work.
Okay. If there's no further general discussion, we have public comment.
Public comment, yes.
Okay. Now, if any members of the public like to come forward, name and address, please, for the record.
Sure. Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I just want to comment about what's coming down the pike with these new assessment numbers. I'm a little bit concerned if there's money left from positions that haven't been staffed, that it's not being rolled into the new positions that are being looked at for next year. I'm a big advocate of not taking salary money and of putting it someplace else because of what's going on with the assessments in the city. Your board packet hopefully will have this piece of information in it, which was presented to the Board of Assessors on April 7th, and it was a first cut estimate of ratios for properties, single family, 2-family, 3-family, and condos. And the ratio as of January 7th was at 70% for single family, 65% for 2-family, and condos it was 70%. The ratio variation though for condos, properties, this was all sales data, were at 0.22% to 1.047%, meaning some of these properties are only at 22% of their sale price. Those properties are going to get adjusted heavily. The single family homes, there was a lot of data, 484 properties, almost 500. They did not break down how that ratio distribution was done. And I think you're going to see a lot of ranches. you're gonna see a lot of lower-end homes, the condos and the ranches, and middle-class people hit very hard. It's just gonna happen. This data did not take into account the correction for depreciation that's been a problem plaguing this city for 30 years. Vision has not folded that in. So, and I am disappointed with this. This data coming out as of April should have had those corrections in there, and they should be talking to us about this. They're producing final numbers in July. But what that means is some of these properties, and I live in an old neighborhood, Ward 3 is a great neighborhood to go and tell us what's happening there, because Ward 3 has a lot of old properties, and Vision's done with Ward 3. They're done with 1 through 7. So they've only got 2 wards left that they're finalizing. These depreciation corrections should be done, but you can easily have a $400,000 home that's getting a $100,000 depreciation discount that it doesn't deserve, and it's gonna get corrected. That means with a tax rate, a new tax rate that I would anticipate coming in at $17, that's a property that's gonna see a $1,700 tax increase that isn't expecting it on top of what's being adjusted. These are serious issues. And I think, and I'm really concerned about the middle class and the lower income people. They're gonna get hammered because of this. And what isn't in this data is the commercial properties. I'm again disappointed with that. We should have commercial data now. We should know. But I will tell you something, the commercial properties haven't lost value because the commercial properties haven't done well.
I'm sorry,
So,
your time is up. I apologize. It
Okay.
wasn't working,
Told you
it
ahead of
wasn't
time,
working
sorry.
properly, so I apologize.
well, it would be
It did go over
wonderful
3
if you
minutes.
moved the big clock over here like they do in Manchester, so the public isn't
Okay.
psychologically tortured by the big clock in the back.
It usually is here with the
From here
lights,
on,
and I
I think
apologize,
it's
it wasn't working properly. I've just reset it. Hopefully it works better.
Okay. Additional public comment? Seeing, oh, no, not, okay. Ms. Orleano stood up, so I thought she was coming back. All right, so comments by the board, members of the board, or committee, I guess? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Yes,
Oh, no, it's Alderman Kelly.
Move to adjourn.
And again, feel free to make a verbal note if I've ever missed you.
I think I'm just right.
Motion was made to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
and
We are adjourned.
at 8:41 PM.